Have you ever found yourself passionately defending your favorite sports team? Or felt that instant click with someone just because they're from your hometown? Our minds are constantly, and I mean constantly, drawing these lines in the sand, creating an us and a them. So today, we're going to dig into the psychology behind why our brains are just wired to do this. So let's get right to it. Why is this us versus them thing so automatic? You might think it's all about culture or how you were raised, but the real answer goes way deeper. It's actually a fundamental process hardwired into our brains that social psychologists have been studying for a long, long time. Just picture this for a second. You've got Farhad and Sarah, two students, just having a normal, friendly conversation. But then the topic changes. Suddenly, they're not just two individuals anymore. They're a man and a woman, each representing their entire group. That switch from I to we happens in a blink of an eye, and it's all driven by something our brains do without us even noticing. And that process? Well, it's called social categorization. It's basically our brain's automatic sorting hat. Think about it. We sort books by genre, animals by species. It just helps us make sense of a really complex world, and we do the exact same thing with people. We sort them into groups: man, woman, student, teacher, my university, their university. It's a mental shortcut, plain and simple. Now, this mental shortcut is incredibly useful, right? It's efficient. It helps us navigate our social world super fast. But, and this is a huge but, it comes at a price. This efficiency has some pretty serious side effects that can literally distort how we see the world. Take a look at this classic experiment. It's so simple but so brilliant. When people saw these lines all mixed up, they were pretty good at judging their links. But the moment you group them, just put them into two categories, people's perception totally changes. They start to see the lines inside a group as more similar than they really are, and they see the difference between the two groups as way bigger than it actually is. And guess what? This exact same little perceptual glitch happens when we categorize people. It leads to something psychologists call outgroup homogeneity, which is just a fancy way of saying, oh, those people, they're all the same. Our mental shortcut smooths over all the wonderful, messy, individual differences within other groups and just lumps them all together. So this little sorting trick our brain does, it's not so harmless. It's actually the first domino to fall in a powerful chain reaction that involves our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. Psychologists have a handy name for this, the ABCs of bias. And you can see right here how it all feeds into itself. It starts with our cognition, our thoughts, which leads to stereotyping. That influences our affect, our feelings, which becomes prejudice. And that, in turn, drives our behavior, which becomes discrimination. Let's break that down. Okay, so first up is C for cognition, which takes the form of stereotypes. These are the beliefs, the generalizations, the pictures in our heads that pop up when we think of a social group. The idea that one group is athletic or another is good at math. Next comes A for affect, our feelings. This is prejudice. It's the emotional gut punch, the fear, the dislike, the anger that gets attached to those stereotypes we have about another group. It's the feeling part of the equation. And finally, we get to B for behavior. This is discrimination. This is when those negative thoughts and feelings actually get put into action, when people are treated unfairly, not because of who they are, but because of the group box we've put them in. So all of this, it builds up to one of the strongest, most reliable findings in all of social psychology. This deep, gut-level preference we have for us over them. It's a phenomenon called in-group favoritism. A researcher named Henry Tajfel, the same guy from the line experiment, set out to find the absolute bare minimum it would take for this group bias to kick in. So he got a bunch of schoolboys, showed them some paintings, and then just randomly told them, okay, you're in the Klee group and you're in the Kandinsky group. I mean, these labels were completely meaningless. The boys didn't even know who else was in their so-called group. Then he gave them a task: award points to other anonymous boys. Now, they could have easily chosen fairness, right? Give 13 points to a kid in their group, 13 to an outsider. But they didn't do that. Overwhelmingly, they chose to give their own group member fewer points, only 8, just so they could make sure the outgroup member got even less. Think about that. Their goal wasn't just to help their team win. It was to maximize the gap between us and them. It was about winning more. And that right there is the essence of in-group favoritism. We're just wired to favor our own. And why? Well, a big piece of the puzzle is our own self-esteem. It gets tangled up in the success of our groups. When our team wins, when our university gets praised, we feel that pride. It gives our social identity a nice little boost. Now, this us versus them mindset isn't just about boys awarding points in a lab. It has profound and, frankly, damaging consequences out in the real world, especially when the stakes are high, like in school or at work. One of the most powerful and sneaky effects, something called stereotype threat. This is the awful pressure a person feels when they're in a situation where they could possibly confirm a negative stereotype about their group. And the terrible irony is that the anxiety and stress of not wanting to confirm the stereotype is exactly what can cause them to perform worse. A landmark study just lays this out perfectly. When Black college students took a really hard test that was described as just a problem-solving exercise, they performed just as well as their white classmates. But, and here's the kicker, when the exact same test was described as being diagnostic of your intellectual ability, which activated that negative cultural stereotype, their performance just plummeted. The threat was in the air, and you can literally see its effect on the results. Wow, okay, so this can all sound pretty bleak, right? If these biases are so automatic, so baked into our brains, are we just doomed to repeat them forever? Is there any way to break this cycle? The fantastic news is yes. 1,000 times yes, we can. The same science that so clearly identifies the problem also, thankfully, points us toward real, evidence-based solutions for tearing down these us versus them walls. A classic study, famously known as the Robbers Cave experiment, shows us exactly how. Researchers created this intense rivalry between two groups of boys at a camp, the Rattlers and the Eagles. And it got nasty. We're talking raids, name-calling, even fistfights. But then the researchers engineered a series of crises, like the camp's water supply failing, that neither group could possibly solve on their own. What they did was introduce what are called superordinate goals. These are shared goals that are so important they completely override the group rivalries and force cooperation. Suddenly, to get water, the Rattlers and the Eagles had to work together. It wasn't us versus them anymore. The boundary was redrawn to create a new, bigger we, all of us campers. And this idea of redrawing the circle or recategorization absolutely works in the real world. In one study, white students were approached by an interviewer who needed help. When that interviewer wore a hat from a rival university, they didn't get much help. But when a Black interviewer wore a hat from the same university as the student, cooperation just skyrocketed. That shared identity where both supporters of this university became more important than race, creating a brand new in-group right there on the spot. And this leaves us with a really powerful final thought. We know our brains create us and them automatically. It's a feature, not a bug. But we've also just seen that those circles are not drawn in permanent ink. Understanding the psychology is the first step. The real challenge for all of us is to then consciously ask, what shared goals can we work toward? How can we today deliberately draw a bigger, more inclusive circle?